All right, all right, all right. So yes, me again for a nice presentation with a new friend of mine, David Urias, PhD. Thank you, David, for joining with us today.
Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
yes. So let me introduce you a little bit. You are so awesome. It's gonna be taking me a while for reading your bio. Wow. So here I go. As the director of social impact at PMI, David Urias, PhD, has helped shape PMI's approach to social impact, especially with regards to championing the design and implementation of ways in which PMI manages and measures social impact across the enterprise, as well as communicate impact to key external stakeholders. Prior to this role, David represented PMI's Educational Foundation. His passion was and remains to inspire and empower youth to turn their ideas into reality through the acquisition and application of project management competencies. His efforts in that role was to integrate program management skill into the classroom by embedding PM language into curricular standards, attend and present at international and domestic conference, facilitate professional development trainings to teachers and educational leaders, and promote PMIEF's no-cost resource worldwide. After work hours, David is highly active. After several decades of open level competitive racquetball, he recently switched to playing pickleball and continues to play soccer twice per week. His favorite pastime is communing with nature, but most of all, spending time with his family.
You
Thank you so
forgot you forgot to mention able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
much. All right. So thank you very much once again. And as I say, the floor is yours.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. Before I begin, I find it ironic listening to Olivier's presentation. I've known Olivier for years, and I had no idea that he's a Taoist at heart. Um, I was thinking about resilience and change and the Taoist analogy of just be a river and just flow. The river doesn't get mad at a stone that's in its way. It figures out to go around it, under it, over it, but to just flow. So having said that, wow, my next slide happens to be about Taoism. Um, just want to start with a short story, if I could. My colleague and friend, Tahiro Hussein, many of you may know him, he and I recently represented PMI in a 6-month UN Global Compact SDG Ambition Accelerator program. And that program was designed to challenge and support the participants in setting ambitious corporate business targets and accelerating the integration of any of the 17 UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, into core business management practices. Now, during the first, I'd say 2 months, if not longer, of the program, 3 months of the program, many of the other participants that represented a wide spectrum of industries consistently expressed a level of uncertainty and really even a little trepidation about where and how to start measuring impact, let alone defining impact. In fact, several asked the question, what is the right way to start measuring impact? And so this got me thinking about PMI's social impact measurement journey. And I kept thinking about the quotes that are listed here on this slide from Lao Tzu. Basically, there really is no right way to begin. Like the Taoist Yoda that Olivier quoted, don't try, just do. Just take that first step and trust that the process will get you to an ever evolving destination. So, with that in mind, with the start of any sustainable journey, if you really want to go somewhere, you have to know where you've been and where you currently stand. And so I'd like to share a little background history of PMI's journey. Starting with in 1989. PMI's drive towards social impact began in 1989 with the establishment of the Educational Foundation, PMIEF, as really the managing steward of scholarships and donations. And you can see on the slide that when it came to measurement, it was very simple and basic. What's the total number and the total dollar amount of the scholarships and donations? Moving fast in time, forward, in 2005, its new strategic vision of project management for social good honed its mission to support three key program areas: nonprofits and NGOs, particularly in the areas of workforce development and disaster relief, continuance in managing scholarships, and the third pillar was youth, meaning reaching youth through teacher professional development, integrating PM language into curricular standards, etc. And then after deciding that the EF was really trying to be all things to all people and thus reducing its ability to generate significant impact, in 2019, the mission and vision of the EF were further refined to focus solely on providing grants and trainings to help youth-serving nonprofits, YSNPs, become more efficient and effective in realizing their missions to support youth, and youth being defined as those between the ages of 5 through 19. And you can see the sort of the evolution of measurement throughout these years. Now, in 2020, this is where the Social Impact Department was formally established by Olivier, if you will. But what's really interesting and inspiring, if you will, is that PMI was recognized as one of 100 organizations that's well positioned to change the world. And the Social Impact Department, again, was established. We brought the EF under its wing to better integrate it with its parent organization. And then looking at the measurement here, again, the takeaway here, it's really up to this point, there's really very slight additions to what was measured. But consistently, the measurement was based on simple addition, identification of any changes year over year, and really with respect to data integrity and governance, well, up to this point, we would often scramble for missing info, missing data, and sort of check who hadn't submitted any information. And worse, we really could never guarantee the accuracy of any of the data because it was manually gathered. I guess basically the way to phrase that is garbage in, garbage out. And so that led us to create a more efficient, accurate, and consistent process. Now, in 2021, the big change here is the beginning use of the United Nations Council's contribution claim framework to determine the social investment of our volunteers' activities in their local communities. What am I talking about? So in 2022, or I'm sorry, in 2019, that's when we had the first Hours for Impact campaign. But in 2020, I started asking the question, this pledging is great. I mean, we're exceeding our goals by leaps and bounds, but these are pledges, which is sort of a promise. What are people actually doing, and what's the actual value that's being contributed? And so by 2021, we came across the UN's Impact 2030 measurement contribution claim and really started looking at that to try to associate a dollar value on the volunteers' efforts in their activities in local communities to generate impact. In 2022, the big thing here is storytelling. And storytelling is trying, well, last year, we attempted to use what's called the most significant change framework to sort of enhance the selection and reporting of the stories of our volunteers. This year, that's absolutely what we're going to be doing, because these stories definitely are exciting. They're heartwarming, emotionally pulling at our heartstrings. But then what do we do with that? What are the lessons that are learned? And so with this framework in mind, we'll be able to utilize these stories in a different way, in a way that sort of aids decision-making. So in this year, 2023, and looking beyond, we really want to do a couple of things. We're looking to further identify and refine meaningful, reportable metrics and goals that are important to all of our stakeholders to appropriately monitor, measure, and report on our ESG and social impact performance and progress. And this includes creating enterprise-wide sustainability targets, as well as regional targets as part of our participation in the UN Global Compact. We also want to foster and empower an inclusive culture that upholds our core values and provides equal opportunities for all, while continuing to uphold the notion of transparency, the notion of ethics and integrity in our data governance practices. So next, I want to take a quick 30,000-foot view of the social impact strategy itself, and then explain how we in fact measure it. So there are really three parts. Excuse me one quick second. Thank you. There are really three parts to the strategy, and I'll go through them quickly. And the first one is enterprise-wide internal. This is where we measure our ESG with a heavy emphasis on the governance piece, our corporate structure, control, policies, practices, distribution of value to staff, stakeholders, et cetera. We're also beginning to measure mental health and productivity now that we've moved to a fully virtual setting. This is also where we showcase our DE&I activities. And we recently signed an alliance agreement with the Sustainability Group based in the UK. And as a result, we have access to their Future Plus platform and carbon footprint calculator. So what am I talking about here? Rooted in the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, the Future Plus platform is really the most comprehensive ESG measurement tool on the market. The uniqueness of this framework and scoring system leverages a variety of best practice sources and industry standards, including recognized certification schemes, ESG indexes, as well as the UN SDGs. In short, Future Plus is really an innovative platform providing a benchmark sustainability score for where we are now, while also providing, because we're project managers, a roadmap and quantifiable measure of where we want to be in the next 3 years. It's a simple way, really, to measure, manage, and report our sustainable growth to staff and stakeholders in real time. Losing my train of thought, I apologize. Really, what's exciting to me about this platform is that it's a tool that doesn't just allow us to benchmark the enterprise to the SDGs while showing our progress towards achieving them. It provides a current real-time PMI branded ESG responsibility report that's really customizable to areas we want to share and highlight based on the audience we're speaking with. The second part of the strategy, I had also mentioned the measurement of our carbon footprint. And so this is something that we're testing out this year for future events like the Global Summit, some of our LIMS, even some of the PMI board meetings. To really make a calculation of what's the carbon footprint that's resulting for attending these live events, in-person events, and what can we then do about it? So really, we've brainstormed a couple of ideas of not just saying, okay, for this event, we're contributing so many tons of carbon to the atmosphere, and that's a bad thing. But taking it a step further and planting trees and buying back carbon credits. But we've also taken some internal steps to reduce our carbon footprint. And I think it's worth mentioning real quickly that, for example, the former global headquarters building pre-COVID was about 70,000 square feet of office space. And recently this year, we've moved out of that building. We've gone from 70,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet, thus reducing significantly our carbon footprint. So let's go back to the next part. Enterprise-wide, but external. Okay, so here we have our enablement metrics with PMI's youth-serving nonprofits, other partnerships, the SDG prioritization. So there's been some debate. Do we focus on one SDG in particular, sort of put all our eggs in that one basket, or do we go for all 17? And what we found by looking through the various tools, resources, materials, certifications, and services that we provide our membership, we really tend to focus on 6. And this is a better visualization, I think, because we're, as an organization, externally, an actor and an enabler. And we trigger that social impact through those 2 channels. As an enabler, this is where the EF comes in with its partnerships with youth-serving nonprofits by supporting their actions, their initiatives, enabling them to achieve their missions in a more effective and efficient way. But also we have direct impact as an actor. This is where you can see the Hours for Impact, no longer a campaign, but an actual program. Community engagement, sponsored research through our academics department and GAC, the Make Reality Challenge, all providing long-term value in alignment with PMI's 4.0 strategy. So going back to this, there's been some debate. Is it 6? Is it 7? It really depends on who you ask. But I think it's safe to say that these are the priority goals that PMI has as an enterprise. But having said that, any volunteer who's participating in the Hours for Impact campaign can focus on any of the 17. There's no restrictions. The third part of the strategy is the project management community at large. This is, again, can be seen in the Hours for Impact campaign, as well as our use of the value contribution measurement framework that I mentioned earlier. And like me, you're probably curious, what is this value contribution measurement you keep talking about? So let's take a quick look. So our measurement framework, again, is based on research done by the United Nations. It's the Impact 2030 measurement framework. It's a 4-step process, beginning with data collection. For our purposes, we're getting data from chapters, from those that submit their pledges through the Hours for Impact pledge form, and they can be affiliated with PMI or not. But that's where we're getting our data. And the first step in this process begins with calculating hourly costs of a volunteer's efforts. So the value of a volunteer hour, for instance, in the US is measured based on hourly earnings released by the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. According to the independent sector with the University of Maryland's Do Good Institute, that value is currently estimated to be $29.95 an hour. Now, if we have a volunteer who's outside of the US, internationally, that's based upon the most recent PMI salary survey map. So that's where we're getting these numbers from. And you can see in the example provided all of our assumptions, because it's all about transparency. For example, the 12% overhead cost, that is an assumption that we're making. Then you calculate the value of those volunteers versus the hours, or in conjunction with the hours. And then step 3, you multiply the number of beneficiaries by $25. That's the assumed cost to run a volunteer service activity. In general, we know that some cost more, some cost less, but again, this is one of our assumptions. And that's going to create the impact, or equal the impact. You, again, multiply the number of beneficiaries by $25 times 2%, because that 2% of beneficiaries will actually advance their circumstance or skill set through that participation. And this is what we call an alternative impact. You add the impact with the alternative impact for a total social investment. And then we align those activities of the volunteers to specific SDGs. So why are we bothering with this ESG and social impact measurement discussion? Well, to me, the answers are simple. Really, it's to first get a better understanding of what resources we're using and what wastes we are producing. Another reason, to calculate baseline figures so that we can set reduction targets and lessen our impact on the planet. This a good example is what I was referring to earlier about the carbon footprint. Another reason, to comply with future non-financial reporting requirements. There are a lot of regulations, particularly in Europe, that are going to be coming to fruition soon, and we sort of want to get ahead of that ball that's rolling. Another reason, to establish where we might create savings and reduce operational costs. And lastly, to help us work out our scopes 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions calculations in order to set realistic ambitions to reduce those. And so I think from what's been shared here so far, the main takeaway I hope you leave with is that really the journey of measuring sustainability enables us as an organization, as an enterprise, and other organizations to move beyond incremental progress and really step up transformative change, which will lead to unlocking business value, building business resilience, and enabling long-term growth, sustainability. And then lastly, I chose the phrase, let's help make the world work better for everyone, as the title for this presentation, really because it's the foundation behind our social impact strategy. While it's the thread that binds us and makes us more alike than different, we use this foundation to inspire and enable people to support our collective sustainable development aspirations, because it feels good to make things better. And as a for-purpose organization, we have the people, the processes, products, and the connections to do more to unleash positive impact. So at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions, or as Olivier would say, any questions, comments, thoughts, feelings, insecurities, but definitely no insults.
All right. Good. Thank you for a presentation. Great presentation. It's always interesting to know how PMI do measure the impact of what they do for society. All right. Oh, we have one question right here. Let me just remove this. I'm kind of getting good into, yeah, I'm seeing that thing. Yes. So here's the question. How this dollar value is taken into account in the organization's overall results?
What is being meant by overall results? And I apologize for answering the question with a question, but I want to make sure I give the right answer, if there is such a thing as a right answer.
Yeah, in PMI's overall results, I guess. Not
It is
specific.
part. It is part of the overarching goals and objectives for the ELT in particular. Or no, let me rephrase that. It's part of the CEO's objectives that this dollar value is accounted for. So we have enablements that we're accountable for. Obviously, the goals for the Hours for Impact campaign, and then now, as of this year, the dollar value of those volunteer efforts.
All right. All right. Thanks. We have another question here from Elizabeth Hector. Social impact and social good is a big reason volunteers like to take part. Do you think we will increase the marketing related to this focus?
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, rational self-interest says that we should. I think the question I would have is, what kind of marketing would we be doing? I think the marketing that we've been doing and are planning on doing is really showcasing the good work that's being done as a result of the integration of project management into various activities at the local level. We're not trying to exploit those activities to promote PMI, but rather promote project management as the effective and efficient mechanisms that skill set and competencies provide, so that we can really increase the level of impact.
All right. Pretty interesting. Good. We have another question right here from Ina. What entity is the consumer of the monetization data of PMI social impact? And we have more questions after all, but see, she took you in advance and asked you more questions.
Okay, so I see 3 questions within this question. So I'll start from the last one. Are the reports available for our viewing? Are you talking or referring to PMI's reports on our ESG efforts, or are you referring to other reports from other organizations and the UN themselves? I'm assuming you're referring to PMI. At this time, the answer is no, and the reason being is because they've never been done before. So by the end of this year, we're hoping to have a different version of an annual report. So the annual report, as it exists, will continue. But we would like to have an end of year sort of sustainability or social impact report that says, this is where we started, here are our goals, and this is where we are towards achieving those goals. Red, yellow, green, to use project management stuff. So my intent, obviously, is to be fully transparent with everyone. And so make those types of reports available to various groups and stakeholders. So not now, but the intent is yes, in the immediate future. So who's the consumer of the monetization? UN Global Compact. That's a great question. So it's confusing, to be honest. Looking through the various pieces of literature and research that the various subcommittees of the UN have created since 2012, it's the consumers are, it seems to be more other organizations, for-profit organizations, that are looking to understand what is this that everyone's talking about now, and how do we measure it, and then how do we report it. And that's one of the reasons why we tailored the UN's measurement framework to fit our needs. One, we're nonprofit, not for profit. Another reason is that, some of the things just didn't make sense in trying to come up with calculations. And so the rationale is, as long as we're transparent with our assumptions, because then you can argue with us and debate, I disagree with this assumption or whatever. But at least we're open and honest with that. So I didn't really answer the question, but I answered it.
All right. But I think it's pretty honest, since you're transparent in the hypothesis and how you conduct it. Well, it shows that you are open to show the yeah.
Well, yeah, we're open to criticism, constructive criticism. We're open to change. Olivier is right. I mean, change is a constant. That's why you can't step into the same river twice. You can sort of tell my philosophical background now. But yeah, I mean, we're willing to amend our assumptions as long as there's a logical reason to do so.
Yes, of course. I don't know if we have any other question for now. So I invite people maybe to provide more questions, since we have 1 or 2 minutes remaining. It was pretty interesting because, when it comes to that kind of topics, what I've seen is people going really into theory, but what I see that is that you converted those theory into real calculation and real options, which is really nice.
And I want to add one other thing. So we do relate these to the SDGs themselves, but I think it's worth noting and pointing out that the SDGs were created to be universal goals, meaning the only ones that are really designed to achieve those goals are countries, not companies, not organizations, and certainly not individuals. And that's what really makes it difficult, because I was asking the question along the time that I was asking, pledge versus real. What is the actual impact we're making on a particular SDG? For example, if 10 volunteers donate 100 hours of their time at a food bank, for example, packaging food and giving it to those in need who are hungry, of the recipients, after a week of finishing those groceries that were given to them, how many of those individuals are no longer food insecure? So it sort of changes the question, because yes, you are making an impact in the activity that you participated in. I don't want to minimize that at all. I mean, it truly is an important impact that has other implications, emotional, psychological implications, whatever. But when it comes to the SDGs, how far are you really pushing that needle in a positive direction to achieve 100%? And again, at an individual or even an organizational level, it's so minuscule. And if you look at it that way, it's almost disheartening and unmotivating. So that's why we're looking at it through a different lens.
Love it. Thank you. One last question, and it's a provocative one. Don't you think that putting a dollar value on social impact diminishes the value of that impact by making it a commodity?
I like this question. And this is coming from Olivier?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough, Olivier, because I insulted him earlier this morning. So I'm going to say no. It doesn't diminish it. This question is sort of akin to the marketing question. There is that possibility, but it's what you do with it and the rationale behind it. So we're not exploiting people. we're not exploiting the system, and we're not making volunteerism a commodity at all. We're just trying to show by proxy what the value, what that activity was worth. And again, by proxy, it might not be the best mechanism to achieve what we're trying to achieve, but it is the mechanism that we have at hand, and we've modified it to reflect as best as possible what we think that value is. And if we didn't do it, other people certainly are doing it. And maybe they're doing it as a commodity, but not us.
All right. All right. Well answered, by the way. Kudos. All right. We have a last question from Carl Renzel. I got how you calculated the cost per resource. However, the cost you used is less than a half of any PMP I know. So isn't this underestimating the cost for the impact?
So first of all, it was a made up example. And second of all, if we really wanted to see how it's applied, I'm going to restate what was said earlier in the presentation, and that is, when it comes to the dollar value of an hourly rate of a PMP in the US, I'm sure that there are PMPs that are making a lot of money. And when you break it down on an hourly level, it's quite significant. But we're using the US labor statistics data. And so for $25+ an hour, if that's too low, I would refer you to them. When it comes to internationally, various countries, I will own this. I made the assumption of there are 200+ countries in the world. I have no idea what the average hourly rate is. The best way that I can think of to make that calculation, that judgment, is through the PMI salary survey that's done every year. So as long as I know what country an individual is from, that's how it's calculated. And so if it's less than any PMP that you know, I would say you're probably knowing some pretty interesting PMPs.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right. Thank you very much.
One final comment is that if we're going to make an error, I would rather err on the side of underestimating than overestimating.
I love your point of view. I love your point of view. Yes. Yes. Good point. Good point. David Urias, thank you very much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Is valuable. Yes. And I remember everyone, please donate. Donate. Do
Absolutely.
it now. It makes it. Yes, it will make a huge impact. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll cue in for another break before going back to another presentation. Thank you very much, David. All right.